Most high performers don't lose momentum at first. They lose clarity. And honestly, that's what makes it dangerous. Because from the outside, they still look capable. They're still productive, still responsible, still carrying the weight. But internally, their thinking starts getting foggy. Decisions become harder, emotions get shorter, patience disappears, focus drifts. Everything starts feeling heavier than it should. Not because they're weak, but because sustained pressure changes the way people think. Welcome to Lead Well, Live Whole. I'm Michael Sirmon, and today I want to talk about something I see in leaders all the time. Why high performers slowly lose clarity, even while continuing to perform at a high level. Misconceptions about leadership fatigue is this idea that burnout always looks dramatic, and sometimes it does, but more often it looks functional. The leader still shows up, still answers emails, still runs meetings, still handles problems, still carries the responsibility. But internally, something is changing because pressure has a cost. And if pressure lasts long enough without recovery, reflection, or emotional honesty, the mind will start protecting itself. You stop thinking strategically and start thinking reactively. You stop leading proactively and start surviving emotionally. And that's usually where clarity begins to disappear. But here's the important part. Most high performers don't notice it immediately because they've spent years learning how to function under pressure. In fact, many successful leaders are rewarded for overriding their own internal warning signs. We push through it, we figure it out, we carry more, we stay strong, we keep producing, we maintain that stiff upper lip. But eventually, the human mind and body begin signaling that the pace, pressure, or emotional load is no longer sustainable. And when that happens, clarity suffers first. Not intelligence, not capability, clarity. You begin second-guessing decisions you normally would make confidently. Small problems start feeling disproportionately heavy. We become mentally crowded. Even simple choices feel exhausting because our mind has lost its margin. And I think this is especially true for leaders who carry the invisible emotional weight. The leaders who feel responsible for everyone, the leaders trying to protect culture, the leaders carrying financial pressure, family pressure, organizational pressure, personal disappointment, silent exhaustion. At some point, the internal noise becomes so loud that clear thinking becomes difficult. Believe me, I've lived this personally, and I've coached leaders through it repeatedly. What makes it difficult is that some high performers often assume the answer is work harder, get more discipline, push through, put more hours in. But clarity rarely returns through more pressure. It usually returns through space. Space to think, space to process, space to rest, space to tell the truth about what's actually happening internally. Sometimes clarity returns when a leader finally admits, I'm not okay. I'm exhausted. I've been carrying too much for too long. I don't know who I am outside of performance anymore. And honesty, it matters. Because suppressed reality creates internal fragmentation. And fragmented leaders struggle to think clearly. One of the most dangerous things that can happen to a leader is becoming disconnected from themselves while remaining highly functional for everyone else. That's where resentment grows. Emotional numbness grows. Cynicism grows. Decision fatigue grows. And eventually, leaders begin making choices from depletion instead of wisdom. I think that's why reflection matters so much. Not motivational hype, not endless productivity content, reflection, stillness, awareness. Because clarity often returns slowly and quietly. Sometimes it comes through a conversation, sometimes through rest, sometimes through prayer, sometimes through journaling, sometimes through finally having the difficult conversations you've been avoiding, but almost always through honesty. And I think leaders need permission to understand this. Needing space to recover clarity does not mean you're failing. It means you're human. So here's the question I want you to reflect on today. What's currently stealing your mental and emotional margin? Not theoretically, honestly. What pressure have you normalized that is slowly clouding your thinking? And then ask yourself this. When was the last time I had enough internal quiet to actually hear my own thoughts quietly? Not constant input, not constant reaction, not constant reality. just clarity. Because if your mind feels crowded all the time, that's not something you want to ignore. You may not need more motivation. You may need recovery. You may need to set some boundaries. You may need rest. You may need support. You may need to stop carrying things that were never yours to carry anyway. And sometimes, the strongest thing a leader can do is pause long enough to become clear again. Sometimes, you just need to sit back and breathe. So whatever you're dealing with today, whatever burden you're carrying, whatever that pressure is, understand this: that is not your identity. That does not define you. But how you deal with it and whether you ignore it can define your future. As a leader, it's important to yourself, and it's important to those that you have been called to lead. It's important to your family, to your teams, for you to be healthy, for you to be whole, for you to be fully engaged. And you only get that by creating space to think, protected space to recover, finding joy again in those things that energize you, that fulfill you, having the conversations that you need to have so you can begin to shed some of that burden that doesn't belong to you. The power is within you. The authority is within you. You just have to give yourself permission. I want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me today. And if this episode has resonated with you, share it with another leader who may be carrying more than they've admitted. And if you're navigating pressure, transition, burnout, or leadership fatigue, you can learn more about coaching and resources at michaelsirmon.com. So until next time, lead well, live whole, and don't lose yourself in the process.